Brace yourself for what is ahead, because southern Texas is far more unexpected and far more wild than even most Texans could possibly imagine. And by the time you make it through these 25 facts, you will see exactly why I am saying that. This is a region where the desert meets the Gulf, where ancient geology collides with living ecosystems, and where the sheer scale of everything defies what most Americans think they know about the Lone Star State. Stay with me, because some of these facts will completely change the way you look at the map. Fact 25. The unbelievable size of South Texas itself. South Texas covers terrain more varied and more dramatic than most entire states in the country. The landscape shifts from limestone plateau country to subtropical river delta to barrier island coastline within a single drive. Most Americans picture South Texas as simply flat, brown, and hot. The reality is a geography so complex and so layered that scientists, ecologists, and historians have spent careers studying individual corners of it without running out of new discoveries. Fact 24. The Rio Grande is one of the most overworked rivers on Earth. The Rio Grande forms the entire southern border of Texas with Mexico, running 1,254 miles from El Paso to the Gulf of Mexico. This river has defined civilizations, drawn political boundaries, and shaped the daily lives of millions on both sides of its banks for centuries. And the shocking part is that the Rio Grande barely reaches the Gulf anymore. So much water is diverted for agriculture and municipal use that during dry periods the river simply stops flowing before reaching the sea, disappearing into sand miles short of the ocean. One of the most historically significant rivers on the continent is being slowly consumed before it can complete its own journey. Fact 23. The Chihuahuan Desert reaches into Texas farther than most people realize. The Chihuahuan Desert, the largest desert in North America, extends deep into the Trans-Pecos region of southwestern Texas, covering an area so vast that Big Bend National Park alone encompasses more than 800,000 acres of its terrain. This desert supports over 1,000 plant species and some of the most dramatic geological scenery on the continent. The Chisos Mountains rise out of its floor to over 7,800 feet, creating a sky island of forest completely surrounded by desert. This mountain range contains species found nowhere else on Earth, isolated by millions of years of desert expansion that cut them off from related populations and forced them to evolve in complete biological solitude. Fact 22. Big Bend contains one of the deepest river canyons in North America. Within Big Bend National Park, the Rio Grande has carved 3 massive canyons through the limestone mountains. Santa Elena Canyon plunges 1,500 feet deep, with sheer vertical walls rising directly from the river surface, creating a slot so narrow in places that the strip of sky visible above is only a few feet wide. The geology exposed in the canyon walls represents nearly 500 million years of Earth's history, compressed into a single dramatic cross-section of rock. Fact 21. Padre Island is the longest barrier island in the world. Padre Island stretches 113 miles along the South Texas Gulf Coast, making it the longest barrier island on the planet. The southern portion is preserved as Padre Island National Seashore, protecting 70 miles of undeveloped coastline. The island is separated from the mainland by the Laguna Madre, one of only 6 hypersaline lagoons in the world, a body of water so salty from evaporation that it exceeds the salinity of the Gulf itself. This hypersaline environment has created a specialized ecosystem supporting unique species that exist in virtually no other habitat on Earth. Fact 20. The Laguna Madre is one of only 6 hypersaline lagoons on the planet. The Laguna Madre, running between Padre Island and the South Texas mainland, is one of the rarest bodies of water on Earth. Because the shallow lagoon loses more water to evaporation than it receives from rainfall, the salt concentration builds to levels far exceeding normal seawater. Yet the lagoon supports enormous populations of redfish, spotted sea trout, and the largest wintering population of redhead ducks in North America. More than 80% of all redhead ducks on the continent spend the winter in this single lagoon. The rarest type of lagoon on Earth happens to sit along the South Texas coast. Fact 19. The Texas Hill Country sits on one of the oldest exposed rock formations in North America. The Edwards Plateau is underlain by limestone deposited when a shallow tropical sea covered central Texas approximately 100 million years ago. Its southern edge forms the Balcones escarpment, a dramatic fault line where the flat plains of central Texas suddenly drop away, revealing ancient limestone layers beneath. This escarpment marks one of the most significant ecological boundaries in the state, separating humid eastern ecosystems from arid western ones in a line so distinct that vegetation, rainfall, and wildlife change dramatically within just a few miles. Fact 18. The Edwards Aquifer is one of the most productive aquifers in the world. Beneath the Texas Hill Country lies the Edwards Aquifer, one of the most productive and most heavily used underground water systems on the planet. It is not a simple underground lake, but a complex system of caves, fractures, and porous limestone through which water moves continuously. It supplies drinking water to more than 2 million people in the San Antonio region. And the staggering part is that the aquifer is also home to the most endangered aquatic ecosystem in the United States. Species of blind salamanders, fountain darters, and Texas wild rice exist only in the springs fed by this aquifer and nowhere else on Earth. Fact 17. The South Texas plains contain the most impenetrable brush country in North America. The Tamaulipan thorn scrub covers approximately 20 million acres of the most dense and biologically unique brush country in North America. This ecosystem of mesquite, prickly pear, cenizo, and dozens of other thorny shrubs is so thick that early settlers described it as nearly impassable. And the remarkable fact is that this thorn scrub supports more bird species than almost any comparable area in the United States. The habitat that ranchers spent a century trying to clear is the same habitat now drawing ecotourism visitors from every state and dozens of countries. Fact 16. The lower Rio Grande Valley is a biological crossroads unlike anything in America. The lower Rio Grande Valley sits at the intersection of 4 major wildlife corridors: the Gulf Coast Flyway, the Central Flyway, the Sierra Madre Oriental Range, and the Tamaulipan thorn scrub ecosystem. This geographic convergence creates a biological meeting point where species from the tropics, the temperate north, the arid west, and the humid Gulf Coast all overlap. More than 500 bird species have been recorded here, the highest total of any region in the continental United States. This extraordinary biodiversity exists in one of the most heavily agricultural regions of South Texas, thriving in remnant patches surrounded by citrus groves and urban development. Fact 15. The Balcones escarpment is where Texas splits into 2 completely different worlds. The Balcones escarpment, running roughly from Del Rio northeast through San Antonio and Austin, is one of the most significant geographical boundaries in the American South. This ancient fault line marks where the limestone plateau drops abruptly to the coastal plains below, creating an ecological boundary so sharp that the landscape on either side looks like different continents. West and north of the escarpment, the terrain is rocky, dry, and covered with cedar and live oak. East and south of it, the land flattens into rich black soil prairies and subtropical lowlands. Fact 14. The Texas coastline is sinking and the Gulf is rising simultaneously. The South Texas coast faces a geographic crisis operating on 2 fronts. The land is subsiding as groundwater is pumped from aquifers beneath the coastal plain, causing the surface to compact and drop. Simultaneously, sea levels in the Gulf of Mexico are rising faster than the global average. The combination means the South Texas coast is effectively losing elevation twice as fast as sea level rise alone would suggest. And the part genuinely difficult to process is that the same groundwater pumping that built the agricultural economy of coastal South Texas is accelerating the disappearance of the coastline that surrounds it. Fact 13. The Devil's River is the cleanest river in Texas. The Devil's River in Valverde County flows through one of the most remote landscapes in the state, emerging from springs in the limestone hills and running 90 miles to the Amistad Reservoir with almost no agricultural or industrial contact along its entire length. The river carries some of the clearest water in the American Southwest, with visibility in certain pools reaching more than 20 feet to the bottom. It supports the largest known population of the endangered Devil's River minnow, found nowhere else on Earth. Fact 12. The Rio Grande Delta was once one of the most biologically rich wetlands in North America. Before intensive agriculture transformed South Texas, the delta of the Rio Grande supported a vast wetland complex of resacas, bottomland forest, coastal prairie, and tidal marsh, forming one of the most productive wildlife habitats on the continent. Less than 5% of that original habitat survives today. The remaining fragments support species found nowhere else in the United States, including the ocelot and dozens of tropical bird species at the northern edge of their range. Fact 11. South Padre Island sits beneath one of the greatest wildlife migrations on Earth. South Padre Island sits directly beneath one of the most heavily traveled corridors of the Central Flyway, the migration route used by hundreds of millions of birds moving between North American breeding grounds and Central and South American wintering areas. When migrating songbirds cross the Gulf of Mexico, exhausted and desperate for food, South Padre Island becomes one of the most important landfall points on the continent. The island's position as the first land these birds encounter after crossing hundreds of miles of open ocean means the difference between survival and death for millions of individual animals every single year. Fact 10. The King Ranch is larger than the state of Rhode Island. The King Ranch in Clayburgh County covers 825,000 acres, an area larger than the entire state of Rhode Island, making it the largest ranch in the United States. Founded by Richard King in 1853, the ranch operates its own zip code, its own school district, and its own internal road network. The geography encompasses 6 distinct ecological zones, including coastal prairie, thorn scrub, live oak savanna, and freshwater wetlands. The sheer size of the King Ranch has inadvertently preserved one of the largest private wildlife sanctuaries in North America, protecting populations of ocelots, whooping cranes, and white-tailed deer that would otherwise have nowhere to go. Fact 9. The most diverse butterfly region in America is in South Texas. The lower Rio Grande Valley is recognized by the North American Butterfly Association as the most butterfly-diverse region in the entire United States, supporting more than 300 species, nearly half of all butterfly species found in the country. The subtropical climate and the geographic position at the convergence of tropical and temperate zones creates conditions supporting both year-round residents and migrating populations. Many of these species were unknown to science in the United States until relatively recently, documented for the first time in North America within the last decade. Fact 8. The Chisos Mountains in Big Bend are geologically unique in North America. The Chisos Mountains are a laccolith, a formation created when magma intruded between rock layers and pushed the overlying rock upward in a dome, rather than breaking through the surface as a volcano. The Chisos Basin sits at 5,400 feet inside a ring of mountains rising to over 7,800 feet, creating a cool, forested island completely surrounded by Chihuahuan Desert. The basin supports plant and animal communities more closely related to the Sierra Madre of Mexico than to anything else in Texas, making the Chisos a biological bridge between two countries expressed in the form of a single isolated mountain range. Fact 7. Amistad Reservoir is one of the largest international lakes in the world. Amistad Reservoir on the Texas-Mexico border was created by an international dam project completed in 1969 and is jointly owned and operated by the United States and Mexico. The reservoir holds approximately 3.3 million acre-feet of water when full, a lake that belongs simultaneously to two nations and is governed by a treaty rather than the law of either country. The canyon walls visible above the waterline reveal layers of human history going back more than 4,000 years through the rock art left by the Lower Pecos people, some of the oldest prehistoric artwork in North America. Fact 6. The South Texas brush country contains one of the last wild jaguar corridors in North America. The dense thorn scrub of South Texas forms one of the last functional wildlife corridors connecting North American big cat populations to their Mexican and Central American counterparts. Jaguars once ranged across all of South Texas and were regularly documented in the brush country. Wildlife biologists have documented individual animals moving through the corridor into Arizona and New Mexico from Mexican populations. The same dense, impenetrable brush country that ranchers have been fighting for a century is the very feature that makes jaguar recovery in North America biologically possible. Fact 5. Falcon Lake sits above one of the most significant prehistoric landscapes in Texas. Falcon International Reservoir was created in 1954 when Falcon Dam was constructed, flooding a valley continuously occupied by humans for thousands of years. The ruins of the submerged town of Guerrero Viejo in Mexico, a 17th-century colonial town, complete with stone church walls rising above the waterline. During the worst droughts, ancient Native American sites also become visible on the reservoir floor, exposing thousands of years of human history that normally sits invisible beneath the surface. Fact 4. The Pecos River High Bridge was the highest railroad bridge in the world. The Pecos River High Bridge, carrying the Southern Pacific Railroad, and stood as the highest railroad bridge in the world, rising 321 feet above the river below. The canyon it spans was carved by the Pecos River, cutting through limestone over millions of years, creating one of the most dramatic gorges in Texas. The current replacement bridge, built in 1944, still carries freight trains across the same dizzying canyon more than 130 years after engineers first looked at that gorge and decided to cross it anyway. Fact 3. The Gulf Coast of Texas is one of the longest in the country. Texas has 367 miles of Gulf Coast shoreline, but when you include the intricate bays, lagoons, tidal flats, and barrier islands lining that coast, the total tidal shoreline explodes to more than 3,300 miles. This coastline is one of the most ecologically productive in North America, supporting fisheries, migratory bird corridors, and coastal ecosystems of extraordinary biological richness. These barrier islands are not fixed features. They migrate, shift, and reshape themselves constantly in response to storms and sea level changes, making the Texas coastline one of the most dynamically changing geographic features in the country. Fact 2. The lower Rio Grande Valley contains the last wild ocelots in the United States. The ocelot now survives in the United States in only 2 tiny, isolated populations in Willacy and Cameron counties. Fewer than 80 individuals remain north of the Mexican border. The cats depend entirely on dense thorn scrub habitat, the same habitat cleared at a rate of tens of thousands of acres per decade. Highway mortality is now one of the leading causes of death for these animals, with individual cats killed attempting to cross roads that fragment the habitat they depend on. The last wild ocelots in the United States are holding on in the most densely populated corner of South Texas, and the margin between their survival and disappearance is measured in individual animals. Fact 1. South Texas is where 2 countries, 2 climates, and 2 continents meet. The final and most defining fact about South Texas geography is this: no other region in the United States sits at the convergence of as many geographical, ecological, and cultural boundaries simultaneously. The boundary between the United States and Mexico, the boundary between the temperate North American continent and the neotropical zone, the boundary between the arid West and the humid Gulf Coast, the boundary between ancient limestone plateau country and the flat, fertile coastal plain. Every one of these boundaries runs through South Texas, crossing and recrossing each other in ways that create ecological complexity and geographical drama that the region's reputation has never fully captured. South Texas is not a region that geography passed through on its way somewhere else. It is the place where some of the most consequential geographical forces on the North American continent arrive simultaneously and refuse to resolve neatly into anything simple. That complexity is not a problem to be solved. It is the most extraordinary thing about it. Now that you have explored all 25 of these incredible geography facts about southern Texas, which one amazed you the most? Let us know down in the comments and see how many people picked the exact same fact as you. And if you want to keep discovering more hidden geography, history, and natural wonders from across the country, be sure to check out the next video on your screen right now. Do not forget to leave a like and subscribe so we can keep exploring together. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next adventure.